Alright, so I feel the need to make this video because I'm just very, very passionate about the subject, and this article from the Pokemon Company on their website, this is Pokemon.com, from the Pokemon Company releasing an article about VGC 2016, and I think it's just very, very poorly done, and it shows a lot of the mismanagement of the competitive side of Pokemon just through inaccuracies, inconsistencies, and not a good representation of what Pokemon is. Now, I've always wanted what's best for Pokemon. I'm not just crapping on this article to crap on Pokemon for the sake of it. I'm just very involved when it comes to esports. Now, I'm not saying Pokemon needs to be a competitive esport or anything like that, but I feel there's so much potential here that is just being wasted through bad articles like this, and it's just really not well managed. So I'm trying to take a step at that. I'm going to go and critique this and criticize it mostly, and a lot of people might already be saying, well, where do I get off? How am I right in trying to go and just kind of dump on this article over VGC? It's Pokemon's effort. They're trying to make themselves legitimate here. I just feel that the writer or this direction is a very, very bad way of doing it, and I'll start talking about that. So why I think I'm actually able to talk about this is because I've been following esports for a very long time. I read all sorts of articles from anywhere with CSGO, League of Legends. Even though I don't play StarCraft and Dota, I'll still read up on it. I'm still pretty familiar with those subjects, and I watch a lot of personalities. I read a lot of articles. I can actually differentiate from what a good article is and not so good article, and this doesn't come off as a good article that represents Pokemon or has any consistency with what Pokemon competitive play is all about, or even the Pokemon Company. And that's one of the bad things, that this is an article that's that's kind of phrased in a beginner kind of way that's only meant for competitive players. So if you're competitive, you already know everything in this article, and it feels like it's written by someone that thinks they know more than they actually do, and they're quote-unquote being try-hard about it. It's an over-analysis that doesn't quite hit the point, and then it just gives a lot of just straight-up inaccuracies. So let's start with those, and let's just work our way from the top down. And this article is honestly a mess, so maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Leave a like if you like it. I'm probably going to see some dislikes, so dislike it if you do as well. I'm just kind of going in, this is my opinion. I'm not saying it's fact or anything, but I honestly feel like the Pokemon Company is wasting a huge opportunity by actually getting the right people in, because I already feel that it's being mismanaged. The rule sets aren't being properly enforced for sure, that the people that are in charge of rulings and just kind of writing and whatnot, interacting with the competitive fan base and whatnot, they're just not the right people for the job, and it's leading to very poorly done articles like this. So first off, the Pokemon Company, they like doing a lot of kid-friendly stuff. Like, we have play games. So if we click right here, we can sign into our account, play games, and earn points, and we can watch Pokemon TV, and even like the TCG and everything. It's really dumbed down for the most part, and there's very, very basic guides. Like, recently they did a guide about breeding, and if you look at a lot of the older articles, it's just very dumbed down, very beginner level stuff, and that's good. But at the same time, we dive straight into something super competitive like this without any distinction, so it creates a very large barrier for entry because people are trying to come in and understand this, and it's done in a convoluted, misleading way. So the first step, like even in the first 2 paragraphs, we already see this. Last season, we saw teams like this. This is Chalk. This is Mega Kangaskhan and Landorus on every single team with like 12 different Pokemon in the finals, or in like the top 8. Like, we saw very, very little diversity, and that's what this says. So first off, you have to have followed VGC last year to understand this, and it doesn't paint a good picture at all. If you're new coming in, you're trying to understand competitive play from official competitive outlets. Like, this is the Pokemon Company. This is their representation of their own game. They're saying it's stale, it's terrible, and they're trying to meme itself about it, which is not how you want to represent your game. This is already a no-no. And then the next thing is, you'll probably see more battles like this year. So now it's all Legendary Fest, and it's the same stagnant stuff with the same exact Pokemon. This is not how you represent your game. You're supposed to be trying to find good in it, not mock at the bad things that are almost inside jokes. And then we can kind of see that this isn't not meant to be a super competitive, top tier only kind of thing. This is a beginner guide, because if you look at the language, if you haven't been following VGC 2016 championship season, you might be surprised by what's upcoming. So they're saying oh, if you're not familiar with VGC 2016, this article's for you because there's going to be legendary Pokemon that were restricted from play last season. So they even spell it out. They even make the distinction that, hey, you weren't here last year, so you didn't know, or you might not have known that there aren't normally legendaries, but this time there's legendaries. So we're already getting into weird stuff, and then we immediately dive into super competitive stuff. So boss battles. Here's again where I just have a small gripe with the language. This might personally be me, no one else might find offense to this, but calling Xerneas, Groudon, and Smeargle a threesome just doesn't feel right to me, an awesome threesome. So I feel like we're already starting to step into the point of just promoting this already very stagnant meta, and that's where I think this very high level train of thought comes from, that people that are tryhards, people that are think they know more than they actually do, or people that are like at the highest competitive level, they're only about promoting what's super competitive. Yes, this is good. You can have people like this, but they shouldn't be getting front page official representation as the only thing. They should be, and I need personalities. I don't think there's a name as to who wrote this. I can't figure out who this is. I can't build up like, oh, this is this writer, this is this writer. Because that's another thing about esports articles, is you start to familiarize with the writers. You go, oh, I normally like what this guy has to say. Oh, I don't like this guy's opinions or take on it. So you can have that entry-level guy. You can also have the super competitive guy. You can look for the articles you want to. There's just not enough diversity here, so they're all cramming into one. And this article, very, very, very long. I feel it's very long-winded. It's just unnecessarily complex and then gets things wrong, and it's just really bad. So not only is it crazy like that, but it is inaccurate. I mean, first off, we can see right here, Jolly Eruption Groudon. I thought I went crazy. I saw this and I'm like, there is no way this is officially on the website. And I know some people are going to defend it. I know that I'm not absolutely incorrect in saying that Jolly Eruption Groudon is bad, but we're using a mixed Pokemon, which already takes a little bit of higher tier understanding. Also, there's no talk about EVs, IVs whatsoever, or any kind of breakdown like that. So when we look at it right here, we don't know the EV spread. We don't know how are we supposed to take a Jolly Eruption Groudon. So Eruption is going to be losing base power by having that Jolly nature, and then we're also running physical moves like Fire Punch and Precipice Blades. Fire Punch is also not the most common move on Groudon, and one thing I learned immediately is that I'll learn more just from looking at the Pokemon Global link. I can go in with very, very little understanding of competitive Pokemon, click on these pretty pictures, and learn more from this than this entire article. And it was meant to be written as something very long, very in-depth look at the game. I feel it overanalyzes. It misses the point so many times and then contradicts the whole attitude of Pokemon. So, Groudon, alright, Jolly Eruption, what am I doing? Am I running any special attack EVs? If I'm running special attack EVs, this is super unoptimized because it takes, I don't even know, like 80, maybe 40, somewhere between 40 and 80 maybe special attack EVs to cancel out this Jolly nature. So naturally I'd want to think 0, but then we're not getting a lot of damage out of it. That's just going to be Fire Punch and Precipice Blades. So I do know that you can still get a lot of damage out of a Jolly Eruption. You can still chunk the opponent down pretty hard because of that Drought. Or Desolate Land ability, whatever. Now, another thing I have here is this is talking about, like, this is common. This is, like, I'm wondering how this is supposed to be read. Is this supposed to be read as in what to expect? That, should I be running this team or should I be anticipating this team? If I am anticipating this team, this is actually incredibly misleading because Groudon, according to the special battle, so the VGC format on BattleSpot, only 7.4% of Groudon are going to be Jolly. And if we look at Eruption, that's only on 55.3% of sets. So it's going to catch me off guard. Like, understandably, you want to be Jolly because you're going to be faster than your opponent. You need that Eruption, you need those outspeeds, but then let's go and look at Kyogre. Kyogre is going to more commonly be a modest Pokemon. Modest at 49%, then quiet, and then timid. So 1/5 of Kyogre are going for that speedier nature, so that means you're going to get undersped, you're going to have Rain cancel out your Groudon anyways, and then Eruption becomes useless. And if you're not running Jolly, then that means you're going to get outsped and your Eruption does less damage. Not to mention that we have Naive Nature right here, so it has some representation, but timid, modest, brave, even quiet, all of these are above Jolly, so that's where the majority of our Eruption usage is going to be, because quiet is going to be Trick Room into Eruption, and that's going to be its own very specific strategy. So Jolly Eruption, not really that accurate, and also bad. And if you think about Naive, so let's look at Naive, the second best option to trying to run a mixed Groudon. I think it's your best bet because Groudon has a huge amount of physical defense. It's not worried about Earthquake, and if its ability is on the field, you're not worried about water anyways. Groudon, from a special standpoint, is only worried about Surf, Scald, and Earth Power. Earth Power is going to be very common. A lot of Pokemon are going to be teching that in or having some kind of ground super effective representation onto the Primal Groudon, so they're going to be doing their damage calculations to where that's going to be a super effective hit on, say, an Adamant. Adamant, Jolly, those are going to be very common, so we're not looking at Naive, and the damage calculations are going to be one-hit KOs on that. So by going with the naive nature, you're not losing as much. So you're only losing 10% on that special defense, which isn't going to really make or break too many 1-hit KOs or 2-hit KO situations, and maybe even 3-hit KOs. But at the same time, now you're losing this huge damage because Eruption, that's going to be under Sun, that's going to be boosted, that's going to be losing a lot more effective power than the special defense from a weaker attack that's trying to hit you super effective. So I want to break away really quick just to add a bit more as to why Naive is just better than Jolly. So if we look at what Groudon is going to be like weak and strong against, Water, it's knocking you out anyways if they find a way to get a Water type move onto you through Airlock or something like that. Same with Ground, Ground, they're going to be throwing out those Earth powers as we've already talked about, but what about the other moves? Well, Electric, that's primarily a special attack. You're just absolutely immune to it. Poison, Fairy, Fire, these are going to be pretty common and you're going to resist them anyways. Now, Ghost, maybe like Gengar and Ghost type Pokemon stuff, same with Psychic, like some Psychic type Pokemon might be an option, but then we have Grass and Ice. For running a fire composition, Grass Pokemon don't want to be anywhere near you, same with Ice type Pokemon, and even that's only neutral, so it's not really going to change many things except maybe some small amounts of 3-hit KOs to 2-hit KOs and like Dragon Dark and stuff, but a lot of the really common ones, like Fairy's going to be big on the Xerneas, you're resisting that anyways, Fire from other like Groudon and stuff like that, and then the Electric, I think the Electric's the other big one, and then you're dead anyway, so it just shows that the Jolly nature is unnecessarily taking away from your special attack when there's really not a massive drawback to running the Naive. It gets complicated already right here, but at the same time, Salamence. This is another mixed Pokemon. What do we do with a naive Salamence that's going to be running Draco Meteor, Double Edge, and Hyper Voice? So the coverage is kind of limited right here, but it actually looks like one of the more common Salamence that we're seeing, that, they have Hyper Voice, Draco Meteor, Double Edge, sometimes Tailwind, Flamethrower, then some other things, Dragon Dance, Earthquake, even the small amount running Hyper Beam. So yeah, this is kind of common, but there's no EVs about it. It doesn't even go into in-depth on how you're going to be running this Salamence. So like, okay, am I going to be using Draco Meteor and Double Edge? What's a Hyper Voice for? What are my damage thresholds? And am I looking for 1-hit KOs or am I just looking for chip? It doesn't really give you that much. And then Smeargle, kind of interesting. Fake Out plus Follow Me. It feels very restricting on how you're trying to be told to run this. Fake Out, this is a standard Kangaskhan. So yeah, a lot of the sets are kind of really weird, and then when we look at it, there's beginner guide stuff as well, that you want to use Smeargle to fake out so your Xerneas is safe while it goes for the Geomancy, and even here it spells it out. Power Herb causes Geomancy to work in a single turn. But then right here they talk about how you want to use Protect or Spiky Shield for a higher level outplay. That technically Protect outplays and reading your opponent, that's very high level strategy, and that's in the next paragraph. Talking about optimizing that to get a Mega Kangaskhan Power-Up Punch, but doesn't talk about, okay, most of the time using Double Edge or Return or Sucker Punch on Kangaskhan is better than just setting up a Power-Up Punch, and your opponent's going to be playing in the same super crazy high damage place as you are, so I don't know. And then they talk about Groudon and some other things, like how you can use the Quick Guard to stop Prankster stuff, and then they just bring up random Pokemon. This absolutely blows my mind. So it's trying to be super uber standard right here about, all right, run the most common Pokemon and do well, and then it brings up these Pokemon which aren't being used at all. I've played a lot of VGC matches on the battle spot, probably close to 100. Haven't seen one Greninja. Gengar's kind of low and it doesn't specify do you want Mega Gengar or not. Later on the guide it talks about Mega Gengar right here. But then it's like, all right, Liepard, Ditto, what do I do with these guys? How do I make it work? So it tries to break the meta a bit, but it doesn't go in depth on it, and then we just get Pokemon that might actually hurt your team synergy if you don't know what you're doing with them, on top of a pretty just basic look at how to run the team without any kind of extra tech added involved. Then there's more teams. These teams kind of don't make sense. Okay, let's run the Modest Kyogre with Water Spout. That way we get outsped and we lose damage on our Water Spout while we're already running the Origin Pulse. So here we could put Thunder, there's a couple of other move options we could put here that work out pretty well, and I just don't see the point of running Genies, especially in Assault Vested Landorus Therian, with, like, you're just not getting a lot of the damage offensive pressure, so this is more of a bulky team setup, and it really just kind of isn't shown here too much. So all of a sudden we talk about like other move options and things we have to be aware of. So we can do huge damage to Xerneas with Gyro Ball, and we can hurt opposing Kyogres with a Power Whip onto the Ferrothorn. Yeah, Kyogre and Ferrothorn have good synergy, but if we look at how the team is supposed to be played, what they want you to do is they want you to bring in the Mega Rayquaza to take out Desolate Land, that way Kyogre can beat up on the Groudon, which is super popular, which is talked about right here. So a lot of the team synergy falls apart because, okay, cool, Now we're trying to clear up our rain, thus reducing our damage overall, and then making ourselves more vulnerable, except we finally get to beat up on that Groudon, which is actually faster than us because it's recommended to be Jolly with Eruption, which will destroy this Ferrothorn anyways. And then I feel the damage coverage isn't that incredible. Like, we have a Mega Gengar with just offensive Sludge Bomb. Now, the Perish Trapping does work out pretty well on this team if you get the right lock-ins and stuff. But again, Perish Trapping on switch-ins and trying to play that tech, more higher level strategy. And I just think that Landorus and Thundurus are slapped in like, oh, these Pokemon are good, just throw them in there. We have small offensive option, more bulk and stuff. It just doesn't kind of add up. And then Dragon's Ascent, Extreme Speed, Waterfall. So we have even more Waterfall to take out the Groudon that we're already working to take out with Kyogre and Rayquaza on the field at the same time. And then just talks about the threats that we have to worry about and stuff like that. Then other Pokemon. So Groudon, Xerneas, Rayquaza, Kyogre, all such powerful Pokemon that they need to try out the full potential of pairings during the Winter Regionals Championship. So it's like, pair it with these guys. So we have 2 Follow Me Pokemon, 3 flying supports that are fairly bulky, maybe not Crobat depending on how you're running it, and then the Rage Powder on Amoonguss, which they kind of talk about already here. And then we get into Veil of Darkness. This is actually a cool team. This one actually innovates a bit more because they talk about, like, you know, Sucker Punch, Foul Play, the Liepard support next to the Yveltal. That's pretty nice. And they slap in the Groudon. But I feel that we get these 2 random Pokemon here without too much else explanation. So this team's actually pretty nice. I don't have too much against this. You know, it's not like super amazing top tier condensed meta kind of idea, but does show some options. And this is a bit more creative on how you can run a team. It does have a lot of good synergy together. And then they just kind of bring in some other random things. Same here, like, alright, now we have Palkia Groudon. This is supposed to be Trick Room into the Quiet Eruption. So that's going to match up right there, but Kangaskhan has different moveset, Amoonguss has different moveset. The Landorus is going to be Choice Banded Jolly, but potentially, like, and then we also have Crobat on this potential Trick Room team. So it gives us different options, as we can see here, that they're talking about, well, we already talked about Smeargle, so we can use Crobat Force to absolutely shut down Smeargles because it can't get faked out, it can taunt the Dark Void, but playing that mix-up game is going to be kind of difficult depending on how committed you are to this Trick Room. You have a Quiet Pokemon, you have a Modest Pokemon. Fortunately, they don't talk about the hidden ability. Like, if they talked about the telepathy ability in this, I would know that this is written by someone that is way full of themselves about the competitive scene. But anyway, you know, we see some different stuff right here. We have Inner Focus instead of Scrappy. Not too sure about that. Amoonguss, that actually works out pretty well. We effectively have the same team, just more Trick Room and then like a Smeargle tech and whatnot. So this kind of works out pretty well. And then they talk about other Pokemon to use. You know, we have Groudon, Kyogre, or, you know, Kyogre without the Groudon, so that means we're running the Trick Room Palkia. So they have Kyogre for, like, Trick Room Palkia and stuff. Yeah, Pokemon frequently used with Palkia, so we have Kyogre for that. And these Pokemon, you know, they're just kind of slapped in. It's like, hey, these Pokemon are common and strong. Let's go and use them. I don't understand the Bronzong, though. Bronzong usually sets its own Trick Room and not has to rely on another Pokemon for Trick Room. So up until this point, the article's kind of been sketchy in some areas. Other points, I can't really dispute it too much, and it's mostly just opinion. But I mean, I feel right now we're starting to get into some really, really silly territory with Ho-Oh Kyogre lead. Ho-Oh Kyogre on the same team. Also, this team seems really lazy. Like, alright, Ferrothorn's common, Salaman's Kangaskhan, you just slap them in and you're going to win, and then we just throw in a Cresselia because it's kind of a bulky, annoying Pokemon instead of giving us other options. Like, there's not really too much branching out on these pairings with other Pokemon, but here's where it takes the cake. So, Ho-Oh Kyogre. I respect trying to make Ho-Oh work. I just don't think Kyogre is the right idea to be showing people if they're trying to understand the game, and I see the synergy, you know, Tailwind Protect, then you Water Spout, and then you can set up things while also being bulky with Recover Brave Bird, but careful nature. So we're trying to survive super effective hits that are already going to be boosted by Kyogre's Rain, and we're really more worried about raw type attacks, which are 99.9% of the time going to be physical, which are going to destroy us anyways. Now here's where I absolutely lost it. Here's where I thought that maybe I was just being crazy. Maybe I'm just not understanding the article fully and it's above my level or something. And then I read this part and I absolutely lost it. With Ho-Oh's resistances to most of Primal Groudon's attacks, Primal Kyogre's Primordial Seed, this duo starts out with a great matchup against some of the most common restricted Pokemon, thus talking about Primal Groudon. Now here's where it makes absolutely no sense. Because if you are going to be faster than your Groudon, Groudon's going to come in, it's going to get rid of your Rain, and then it's going to blow you up with a Rock Slide while making it to where you can't Water Spout or Origin Pulse. if you are slower than the Groudon, you are slower than the Groudon. So to get the rain on the field, that means your Groudon's already going to be able to outspeed you and your Ho-Oh. Because you're Careful Nature, you're not going to have any speed. That means if it's Jolly Nature coming in with a Rock Slide, your Ho-Oh is gone. And you don't get to do anything about it. Then Kyogre gets to redeem on the Groudon, I guess, with damage. But it just kind of shows, like, there's so much that could go wrong by doing this if you're playing it that way. And either way, Groudon is going to be better than you because, like I said, you're faster and you lose your rain, or you're slower and then it gets to blow up your Ho-Oh, and then there's another Pokemon. So what that Pokemon can do is it can fake out, it can destroy your Kyogre, it can do something else. There's that 30% chance that Kyogre is going to flinch from the Rock Slide, which you do have to take into account. So this combo does absolutely nothing, and they do, for their credit, mention Ho-Oh works with any of the restricted legendary Pokemon. Then why give the worst example as the main example and all sorts of other weird stuff? Magic Coat on Cresselia, yes, it is a risk. Yes, this Trick Room thing is kind of weird. And then we have like Brave and Naive and Jolly Nature. Why are we even thinking about running Trick Room when everything else doesn't want to be on the Trick Room? Except for maybe Ferrothorn. So it's kind of like that late game salvage. So you're waiting for Ho-Oh Kyogre to go down, then Ferrothorn Cresselia against like a Xerneas that's already setting up. So you can sneak in a Trick Room and then Gyro Ball it with speed? I don't know. Like, it doesn't even go into that as much. So yeah, Ho and Kyogre have middling speed. So other popular Pokemon this season, Cresselia's Trick Room allows them to move first through against teams of quick Pokemon that are trying to set up Tailwind. But you're bringing Tailwind. You have to know what your opponent's going to lead, or else you're just going to bring in Cresselia as a third or fourth slot. Leading Cresselia Ho-Oh is also pretty bad in its own, and this whole thing just makes me lose my mind about how it doesn't make sense. Like, it's all that high-level competitive stuff. Well, if your opponent would have done this, then you could have done that, which means you should have done this, because that is the better option, when it's really just all this random stuff. It's pretty much saying, if you roll a dice and it comes up 4, that's when you lead Cresselia with Kyogre. And if you roll a 7 on a 6-sided dice, you should have brought Amoonguss instead. This article isn't really well written. Like I said, someone that feels like they overanalyze. They think they know everything about the game. When they just start putting it on the paper, it doesn't make any sense. So they talk about, yeah, we've only touched on a few strategies, only the most common ones. The only one I have to really give some super credit for is this dark one, because it at least promotes not using the most common Pokemon. You take out these two guys, you know, we pretend they don't exist or anything, and then we have a pretty unique team that might actually find some good amounts of success. But the rest of it doesn't really branch off. They just kind of slap in things where it needs to be there. And I feel when it comes to a well-written article, this is not one for a competitive quote-unquote esport. Like I said, I'm not trying to value Pokemon as an esport because it's its own complicated thing and genre and whatnot. But when it comes to trying to make something professional, this isn't it. And it's published by a Pokemon company. It has inaccuracies. It's misleading. It's meant to be a beginner guide that has nothing to do with beginner levels of play. And it's just promoting a stale meta while making fun of the stale meta, while showing no professional realization of the Pokemon, and just kind of confirming that's mismanaged. Now here's the thing, it's not just me disagreeing with this article. Pretty much all of my friends that still play Pokemon or have played Pokemon in the past, they feel that this article is terrible. It does a lot of misrepresentative things. I went onto Twitter, a lot of people were laughing at the inaccuracies of this article. Sure, it does cover some competitive things, and sure, the most competitive of players might think it actually hits some good points, and it might actually be absolutely correct. But that's the thing. The super competitive part of Pokemon is not the majority. It is not what you want to be catering to. You don't want to be reinforcing a stale meta. You don't want to be reinforcing a super try-hard mindset if you want your game to progress. That's when you develop it separately on the side. You don't make that the main style as though this article is promoting it. That, as I've shown, it's way too complex, it's way too unnecessarily complicated if you're trying to be someone enjoying Pokemon. I feel that this article actually goes against the spirit of the game because of how, I don't even want to say condescending, but it almost feels that way because the article almost comfortably talks about all of these things as though they are correct, when, as we have seen, they are not directly correct with a lot of the assumptions made in this article. And that is a very big problem, which I feel is not necessarily a toxic attitude, but it's a poor mindset to go into the spirit of the game, to go into the spirit of Pokemon, and all of my friends agree with that. So it's something that shows that there needs to be a change with the Pokemon Company to take Pokemon back to its roots, and as well as going ahead. You know, you need to take a step back to push yourself further ahead, Pokemon. I'm doing this because I care. What the Pokemon Company needs to do is they need to almost start fresh with it. They need to rewrite their rules and stick to them because they are not following half of the rules in the guidelines of how you're supposed to play. And because of that, people are running away with it. This article doesn't represent anything about other articles that the Pokemon Company has done. And while they are trying to expand and branch out, it's not being done in a gradual way. Everything else doesn't make any sense. This is above everyone else's head and it's not really formatted correctly. So yeah, we also have like previews and stuff. I mean, I've already looked at this and it kind of just goes down about all the Pokemon stuff and what they can be doing. And even between these two, so you look at these two, there are inconsistencies of what wants to be doing what. So yeah, we can see like Origin Pulse, Water Spout, Ice Beam, Thunder. Where's Thunder? We don't even see the Protect, Calm Mind, or Hydro Pump or anything like that. With Groudon, this guide actually does really good. This is the kind of article I want to expect out of Pokemon, and if it's the same person writing it, then I don't know what happened between this one and the other one, because yes, this is very basic. This is very intro level. It's clear, it's concise, it talks about even the most basic fun combos that might not even be super competitive, like speed of Pokemon with Chlorophyll when you're trying to boost into the Drought. We didn't see anything like that. We didn't see all these other movesets and stuff, but this is very basic. It doesn't disrespect any other strategies. It doesn't come off as knowing more than it should, and it's just a very basic look like, alright, this is what you want to go for, this is the basics of how the Pokemon plays, and then the next thing you know, we jump into this super way overdone thing that contradicts it. This article contradicts the previous article in so many different ways if you just sit down and look at it. And then, where's Giratina? Where are these other Pokemon that might actually work against the meta? So it's like, okay, if this is a what to expect article, then why is it not showing us the most common things? If you go into Pokemon GL, you'll learn more about what to expect than if you look at these teams. And I mean, I don't even know if these are official teams. We haven't had any VGC regionals. When we looked at the International Challenge, the teams didn't play quite this way, so it doesn't really show. It's just one guy's view that isn't really too awesome at the VGC, and I'm ranting about it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, I'm honestly just looking out for Pokemon at this point. I feel like there's so much squandered potential right here. The mismanagement is destroying the competitive integrity of the game, and that is the worst thing that could happen to Pokemon. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for watching.